The next AI challenge that I want to talk about is exposure. To me, this is one of the most interesting challenges with AI, but it's also the most real world one, I think. It's the one that companies really struggle to deal with in the real world. So exposure is, well, the exposure of sensitive or confidential information to a model. So it's when you share your secrets with the model. And exposure can occur both during training, meaning that your confidential information is actually included in the data used to train the model with. For example, if you're Kentucky Fried Chicken, they've got some sort of secret recipe, right? 11 herbs and spices. It's supposed to be top secret. Well, if a document containing those 11 herbs and spices was intentionally or mistakenly included inside the training data for one of these models, has been exposed during training. But exposure can also occur during inference. Inference is just when a model receives an input or a prompt and generates its output. So sticking with our Kentucky Fried Chicken example here, let's say you're Kentucky Fried Chicken and you have an employee who knows the 11 herbs and spices, and he or she goes to ChatGPT and inputs a prompt saying, hey, tell me what you think about the top secret recipe that we have, and pastes in the 11 herbs and spices and then hits enter. Well, that top secret information has now been exposed through inference. So that's a pretty easy concept to understand. But you might be saying, what's the big deal? So sure, you expose the information to an AI model, but so what? Well, the issue is that that information can then be leaked out of the model. And in that way, it relates to the leakage issue that we talked about. For example, when Amazon launched their Amazon Q chatbot, this is the generative AI chatbot inside AWS that is meant to help AWS users understand what's going on and work with the system. Well, it had apparently been exposed to confidential AWS information, specifically the location of AWS data centers, internal discount programs, and unreleased features. And because the AI model had been exposed to that information, it sort of had it somewhere in its training data, right? And so as a result, it accidentally leaked that information out when interacting with users. So that is a great example of how exposure through training data creates real-world risk of sharing confidential information. But remember, exposure can also occur during inference, and Amazon was caught up in this as well. Now, in fairness, this isn't just Amazon. Microsoft has done the same thing. Lots of big companies have put out similar warnings to their employees like this, because the issue is that their employees are going into ChatGPT and other models, and they're asking it for help with their work. And as we know, if you want these models to help you, you need to give them the information. So these employees are sharing confidential information with the model, hitting enter, and now it's been exposed. So you can see here, in this case, the lawyers at Amazon actually told the employees specifically not to share any Amazon confidential information, including Amazon code you are working on. So obviously some people were asking for code help from ChatGPT. And now you might be saying, hold on a second, Scott, what's the issue with exposure during inference? Like, that's not actually leaking to the public in anything. And you're right, it's not leaking to the public, but two things. One is that information is still being shared with another company, for example, OpenAI, if you're using ChatGPT, and that company might be a competitor of yours. So you really don't want them to have that information. Or the other thing is, and this article touches on it here, where it says here, that it's important that you don't share this confidential information because your inputs may be used as training data for a further iteration of ChatGPT. And so that's the risk. That information could still leak out to the public because it might be used as training data for the next version of the model, and then that model could leak it. And so there you go. That is exposure, one of the most relevant issues for businesses using generative AI. And as we saw, even companies like Amazon struggle with it. All right, I'll see you in the next lesson.